Have you ever felt like something about this world is off? Like there's a curtain you're not supposed to pull back? As if everyone's just living inside a story someone else wrote, and nobody remembers who the author was? If you felt that, stay with me. What you're about to hear may feel strange, maybe even rebellious, but it will also feel right. Like something you've always known deep down but couldn't put into words. So take a breath. Let's talk about the truth hidden behind the version of reality we were trained to accept. Because if there's one message at the heart of this entire journey, it's this: you are far more powerful than you've ever been told. The version of God you've been given. Since childhood, most of us were given a very specific image of God: a ruler, a judge, a being somewhere up there who watches every move, rewards obedience, and punishes mistakes. A cosmic king who sits on a throne, scribbles our actions in a notebook, and hands out consequences like a strict parent. That version of God shaped entire civilizations, shaped how millions lived, feared, prayed, and submitted. And whether you grew up religious or not, this idea of a giant authority in the sky probably shaped your inner world more than you realize. But here's the uncomfortable question nobody asks. What if that wasn't the real source at all? What if the highest truth wasn't a ruler on a throne, but something closer, something within? For thousands of years, there have been teachings quiet, almost forbidden, that suggest the God we were taught to obey wasn't the true creator, but a distorted reflection of something much more infinite. And the moment you hear this, something in the heart stirs. Because part of you already knows that the real source wouldn't need worship, fear, or threats. Real creation doesn't demand anything. It just is. The Gnostics' dangerous secret. Let's rewind to ancient Egypt, Greece, Syria, and early Judea. There existed groups known later as Gnostics, not a religion, but seekers who believed truth could be known directly, not through priests or institutions. Their core belief shook the foundations of every empire. The divine is already inside you. They taught that the ultimate source, what they called the monad, was infinite, formless, and absolutely beyond anything the human mind could capture. And because it was infinite, it expressed itself through everything, including you. But here's the twist. The physical world we live in, they didn't see it as the true creation. According to their texts, the material world was shaped by a lesser force, a being they called the Demiurge. Not a devil, not a villain in the Hollywood sense. Just incomplete, a kind of cosmic architect who thought it was the highest power, but wasn't. And around this being existed archons, forces that manipulated perception, twisted reality, and kept humans trapped in a kind of spiritual fog, not by attacking us physically, but by influencing the way we see ourselves. Imagine someone placing tinted glasses on your eyes since birth. You'd swear the world is that color, even though it isn't. That's how the Gnostics described human consciousness. Born into a distortion, raised inside it, and taught never to question it. Dangerous idea, right? That's exactly why the Roman Church tried to destroy every trace of these teachings. Anything that gives humans direct access to the divine threatens the empires built on control. A bad copy of a beautiful world. One of the most striking Gnostic ideas is this: the world we think is normal is actually a copy of the original, a shadow print of a reality that exists on a higher level. They said the Demiurge and the archons weren't creative. They couldn't make something original. They could only imitate. So they took the blueprint of the original divine world, think of it like a realm of pure awareness, freedom, and connection, and made a lower resolution version of it. A world where people forget their true nature. People question their worth. People fear death, loss, judgment, and isolation. In the Gnostic view, this fog wasn't natural. It was part of the architecture. But here's the key. Humans contain something the archons don't. Something they can't create and can't touch. Imagination. Inner light. The spark of the monad. The Gnostics believed humans were dangerous to the archons, not because we're physically powerful, but because when a human wakes up, nothing in the system can control them anymore. The Matrix before the Matrix. Long before the movie existed, ancient texts described something eerily similar. A world where humans are fed illusions, beliefs, and emotions that limit their perception. Not because the world is evil, but because these forces operate like programs. Programs that keep you focused outward. Look at authority. Look at rules. Look at punishment. Look at external validation. Look at what others say you should be. Anything except yourself. The Gnostics said the real trap isn't physical. It's mental. It's emotional. It's perceptual. Think about it. When you're scared, you give power away. When you feel unworthy, you shrink. When you think you need permission to be divine, you never even try. And that's the secret. The system survives only when you forget who you really are. The shadow god V's. The real source. Let's go deeper. According to these ancient writings, humanity made one huge mistake. We assumed the loudest voice, the commanding, jealous, fear-based voice, was the real creator. But the Gnostics insisted, no, that's just the shadow. A reflection seen through fear, misunderstanding, and control. The real source, the monad, doesn't threaten, doesn't dominate, doesn't demand worship. It simply radiates. It simply exists. It's the silent pulse behind everything. It's like sunlight. The sun never tells you to bow. The sun never punishes. It just shines, freely, without conditions. And the most shocking part? The Gnostics said the spark of that same infinite source exists inside every human. Not metaphorically. Literally. This is why they were hunted. Empires can't tolerate humans who realize they don't need intermediaries. Jesus, the rebel teacher who tried to show the shortcut. Now here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because in Gnostic writings, especially texts like the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus isn't portrayed as someone asking for worship. He appears as someone trying to wake people up. His message wasn't follow me. It was become what I am. When he said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he wasn't speaking poetically. When he said, "You are the light of the world," he wasn't being symbolic. And when he said, "Greater works than these will you do," he wasn't exaggerating. He was pointing directly to the power sleeping inside every human soul. A power institutions could never control. And that's the exact message the Roman Church worked the hardest to suppress. They changed his teachings into obedience, hierarchy, and fear. They took a man who spoke about inner freedom and built an entire structure around worshiping him instead of becoming like him. Imagine how different the world would be if humanity believed I am connected to the source rather than I am unworthy. Why they needed you to forget. If every human walked around knowing, my consciousness is a doorway to the infinite, everything would collapse. Blind obedience, fear-based religion, authority built on guilt, societies built on submission, power structures that thrive on human insecurity. Gone. So instead of telling you you're infinite, the world tells you you're flawed, you're sinful, you're limited, you're dependent. You need an external savior. But here's the thing. The moment you start looking inward, instead of upward, their system starts to shake. The real battle was always inside. Let's get real for a moment. You've probably had times in life where something inside you whispered, "There's more." This isn't the full picture. I feel something bigger inside me. You might have brushed it off. Life gets busy, right? But that whisper? That was the part of you the Gnostics talked about, the spark of the monad trying to rise through the noise. And the noise is thick. Stress, doubt, trauma, fear, expectations, social pressure, the belief that life is just this. When the archons are described as rulers, don't imagine monsters with wings. Think of them as currents inside the collective mind patterns that keep humans looping in fear, distraction, and disconnection. Not enemies, just forces that benefit when you forget who you are. So how do you remember? Awakening isn't about chanting in caves or climbing mountains. It begins in the simplest place. Stillness. Just sitting quietly, letting your attention drop inward, noticing the awareness behind your thoughts. There's a point in you behind the noise where you feel calm, present, connected, almost like a silent observer watching your life. That's not imagination. That's the doorway. That's the place the Gnostics said leads to the real source. And the more you enter it, the more the illusion starts to thin. You feel less controlled by fear. You feel less influenced by society's expectations. You begin to experience yourself as something deeper than just a body or personality. Your awareness expands. Your intuition sharpens. Your perception changes. And eventually, you start to feel the presence of the monad inside you. Not as a belief, but as a living experience. The first step. Before any spiritual practice, before any philosophy, before any technique, there's one thing that begins the journey: noticing who is noticing. When a thought shows up, I'm scared, I'm not good enough, I'm confused, pause and ask, who is aware of this thought? That question opens a crack, a tiny doorway. Through that doorway, a whole universe begins to reveal itself. This is where part 1 ends. Part 2 will take you into the inner journey itself, the unification of self, the opening of inner channels, the lifting of awareness, and the profound recognition of your true nature as the monad in human form. So now we reach the part most people never talk about. Not because it's secret, but because it's simple and simplicity scares systems built on complication. In part 1, we talked about the matrix-like world described by ancient seekers. We talked about how the true source isn't an external ruler, but a living presence inside you. We talked about how fear, conditioning, and misunderstanding keep you from seeing what's already yours. Now let's explore what actually happens when you begin to wake up. Not in a dramatic movie-style way, not with lightning bolts or voices from the sky. Awakening happens quietly, softly, almost gently, like sunlight coming through curtains in the morning. But once it starts, nothing in your life stays the same. Let's go deeper into the steps of this inner journey, the actual path the Gnostics, the mystics, and even Jesus hinted at again and again. Step 1. The return to stillness. Everything begins with stillness. Not the kind of forced meditation where you're trying to silence the mind, but the kind of stillness where you let the noise exist without chasing it. Think of your awareness like the sky. Thoughts are clouds. Most people spend their entire lives wrestling with the clouds, screaming at them, fighting them, judging them. Stillness is when you realize the clouds never mattered, because you're actually this guy. When you sit in silence and simply watch the mind without grabbing anything, something subtle shifts inside you. You begin to feel a space that's always been there, a presence that doesn't change, doesn't panic, doesn't get pulled around by fear. That presence is the doorway to the monad. The Gnostics didn't want people to believe theories. They wanted people to notice this presence directly, because the moment you feel it, even for a second, the illusion of limitation starts to crack. Life becomes less reactive. less chaotic, and suddenly there's a little more room to breathe. This is where the real journey begins. Step 2. Gathering your scattered self. Once you start noticing this inner presence, something interesting happens. All the parts of you that were ignored, suppressed, or wounded begin to rise to the surface. The doubts, the insecurities, the anger, the fear, the childhood pain, the habits that don't serve you, the voices that say you're not enough. At first, it feels messy, like your mind is trying to pull you back into the old patterns. But don't run from this phase. This is where the transformation actually happens. Every part of you that feels broken is simply asking to be seen. Not fixed, just acknowledged. Imagine your inner world as a house with many rooms. Some rooms you visit often. Some you've locked for years. Awakening isn't about escaping the house. It's about walking into every room, turning on the light, and allowing yourself to be whole again. This step is not pretty. It's not glamorous. But it is powerful. Because the moment you stop running from your inner shadows, they lose their ability to control you. And that's when something new begins to grow inside you, a steady kindness toward yourself. A softness that feels like home. This is the beginning of inner unification. Step 3. The opening of inner channels. This is the part most people feel but can't explain. As you spend more time in stillness and more time embracing your inner world, your energy begins to shift. You might feel a light pressure between your eyebrows, a warmth in the chest, a tingling in your spine, a pull upward as if something inside you wants to rise, a sense of expansion during breath, a clarity that wasn't there before. These sensations aren't weird. They're natural. The Gnostics described them. The yogis described them. The mystics of every tradition described them. It's the feeling of inner channels opening. Not literal pipes, but pathways of awareness that were blocked by fear, guilt, or conditioning. The center of the forehead, what Jesus called the single eye, becomes especially active during this stage. Not because you're visualizing anything, but because awareness itself is gathering there, gently waking up a part of you that's been dormant. And when this awakening builds, the crown, the top of your head, starts to feel alive, almost like a gentle swirl or a soft breeze moving from inside. This isn't something you force. It isn't something you chase. It happens when you're simply ready. It's a sign that your consciousness is preparing to move beyond the narrow identity you were conditioned to believe. The pull into the higher current. This stage can be intense. It's like your awareness begins to stretch. You feel lighter yet more grounded at the same time. You may notice waves of emotion rising and passing quickly. You may feel deeply connected without knowing why. You may sense that something in you is rearranging itself. The Gnostics described this moment as the lifting, when awareness begins to rise beyond the layers of illusions, fear, identity, memory, conditioning. It doesn't happen dramatically. It happens quietly, almost secretly, as if the universe doesn't want to scare you with your own potential. And then, at some point, maybe during meditation, maybe while sitting quietly, maybe while staring at the sky, something shifts. The I you've always identified with loosens. You feel less like a personality, and more like awareness itself. It's a strange, beautiful moment. You're not disappearing. You're remembering why this step was always hidden. Let's be honest. A person who reaches this stage becomes free. Not in a rebellious sense, in an unshakable sense. You stop being controlled by fear. You stop seeking external validation. You stop depending on institutions to tell you who you are. Your decisions become clear. Your intuition becomes sharp. Your presence begins to influence others without trying. This kind of freedom threatens every structure built on obedience. That's why institutions hid this knowledge. That's why people who discovered it were called heretics, rebels, or worse, not because they were dangerous, but because they couldn't be controlled. Awakening makes you sovereign inside your own being. And that kind of sovereignty is the one thing systems of control fear the most. Step 4, the surrender. There's a moment in the journey where the mind realizes it can't lead anymore. Not because it's weak, but because it was never designed to hold the entire truth. The mind is like a brilliant assistant, great at organizing, planning, remembering. But the mind can't touch the infinite. It can't comprehend the monad. When awareness rises and the inner channels open, the mind begins to soften. Its grip loosens. Its fears lose intensity. This is where surrender happens. Not surrender as in giving up. Surrender as in letting go of pretending that you're disconnected. You stop forcing answers. You stop trying to control outcomes. You stop clinging to identities that never truly belong to you. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for years. This is the moment when the light inside you begins to move freely. And it's also the moment where the old patterns try one last time to pull you back. Who do you think you are? Why are you changing so much? Stay normal. Don't walk too far. People won't understand. These voices don't come from your true self. They come from the layers of conditioning that are dissolving. Let them dissolve. Because after surrender comes something extraordinary. Step 5. Recognition the monad in you. There's no way to describe this perfectly with words. But here's the closest we can get. One day, in a moment of quiet, you feel something unmistakable. A presence inside you that doesn't come and go. A stillness that isn't empty. A fullness that isn't overwhelming. A sense of being alive in a way you've never felt before. You realize the light you used to pray to is the same light rising inside you. The presence you used to search for is the same presence watching your thoughts. The God you were told to look upward for is the same awareness shining at the center of your being. This isn't ego. This isn't imagination. It's the experience mystics tried for centuries to describe. You recognize yourself as something infinite wearing a human form, not a ruler, not a savior, not a special chosen being, just awareness, pure, steady, silent, eternal. The monad, the source, isn't outside you. It's the core of who you are. This is the recognition the Gnostics guarded. This is the state Jesus tried to awaken in others. This is the moment institutions feared. Because once you reach this stage, there is no going back. You don't become arrogant. You become calm. You don't become detached. You become deeply alive. You don't escape life. You finally enter it fully. And from that moment, the world looks different. Living in the world after awakening. Awakening isn't about floating in bliss or detaching from society. It's about seeing clearly while still living in the human experience. You still work. You still love. You still learn. You still face challenges. But everything is infused with a new awareness. You feel guided without needing signs. You feel connected without needing validation. You feel peaceful even when life is messy. You feel grounded even when situations shake. You feel whole even when you're healing. People around you notice something has changed. Not because you act different, but because your presence carries a quiet strength, a clarity, a calmness, a softness. You become a living reminder of what it looks like when a human remembers their true nature. And this is where your life begins to align with what feels true in your heart. Not what society expects. Not what fear demands. not what others think you should be, but what your inner being knows is right. The real teaching Jesus tried to deliver. Let's bring it back to where we started. Jesus didn't come to build another system of control. He didn't come to create a hierarchy. He didn't come to ask for worship. He came to show what awakened consciousness looks like when expressed through a human life. He healed not to impress, but to show what the mind can do when it's fully connected. He spoke in parables not to confuse, but to awaken remembrance. He faced authority not with fear, but with clarity. And he taught that what he did, others could do too. Greater works than these will you do. This wasn't metaphor. It was a direct statement of human potential. The true danger wasn't Jesus. It was his message. You are the light of the world. The kingdom is within you. Before Abraham was, I am. He wasn't describing himself. He was describing the truth of consciousness in every human. A truth that institutions couldn't afford to let people know. The path forward, staying awake in a sleeping world. Here's the part nobody tells you. Awakening isn't a one-time event. It's a way of living. Every day, you return to stillness. Every day, you choose presence over fear. Every day, you walk with awareness instead of conditioning. Every day, you remember what the world made you forget. Some days will feel easy. Some days will feel heavy. But the portal inside you never closes. You just learn to walk through it with more ease. Because the journey isn't about leaving the world behind. It's about walking through the world with the light of the monad shining through you. And that is the most powerful thing a human can ever become. So if you're listening to this right now, hear this clearly. You are not small. You are not broken. You are not separate. You are not here to obey or shrink or hide. You are a spark of the infinite, experiencing life in a human form. You are the doorway. You are the witness. You are the presence. You are the light. You are the monad in motion, and the world changes the moment you remember that.